the first movie in the hugely beloved Maguire Cinematic Universe, or MCU for short, is Raimi's rendition of Spider-Man from 2002, where Tobey plays the hero, Kirsten the love interest, and Willem the foe. So the movie starts with Peter asking,
Who am I? You sure you want to know?
which honestly seems like a rather weird way to start the movie since the title of the movie is literally Spider-Man. He then goes on and explains his love and affection for MJ, possibly suggesting that he's heterosexual, and that he's late for the bus. Once they finally let him on the bus, we can see that he's a victim to bullies, which is a clever foreshadowing to Spider-Man 3, where he himself becomes a bully and a menace to society.
I'm gonna put some dirt in your eye. Look at little Goblin Jr. Gonna cry?
You'll get your rent when you fix this damn door!
We then get introduced to Harry Osborn, a good friend of Peter, as well as his father Norman Osborn, who's betrayed by actor Willem Dafoe, which translates in The Foe, which is a subtle hint that he might be the main villain Green Goblin. Once inside the genetics lab, we learn that Peter is passionate about photography and takes pictures of his classmate during this field trip. Notably absent from the photo shoot, though, is Peter's bully, Flash Thompson. This is because most labs don't allow flash photography. On the same field trip, the teacher warns,
The next person who talks will fail this course. I kid you not.
this would mean that everybody, including Peter, used to talk and get held back a lot because they're all adults who are stuck in high school. Joe Manganiello, who plays Flash, was 26 at the time of the movie's release. It's like the movie's not even trying. After then thirsting for MJ, Peter gets a radioactive spider bite the size of a golf ball, but instead of going to the hospital, he decides to sleep it off since Peter is poor and lives in America. At no point does the movie show Peter being bitten by any other animal than the spider. This is done for the viewers to come to the conclusion that the spider bite is most likely the catalyst for his newfound abilities. Peter then wakes up the next morning with improved eyesight and improved strength. Aunt May then asks if there's been any change, whereas Peter responds with,
Big change.
while looking at his ding-dong, meaning spider bite is the secret doctors don't want you to know when it comes to growing your third leg. Back to the foe. After his meeting with the board of directors, he decides to start the human trials on himself in order to not lose fundings, and decides to hiss at the only member who said the formula wasn't ready, much like I do to my girlfriend when she says the food is not ready. We then get the famous lunch tray scene where Peter discovers his newfound abilities. This scene actually took 5 weeks to film because after each failed attempt, Tobeymaguire would get down on his hands and knees and eat the food off the floor. After hitting his bully Flash with the tray, we get to see his newfound abilities. Talking about his newfound abilities, Peter has a spider sense ability that allows him to foresee incoming danger. This is a false power. In real life, I sneak up on spiders constantly and scare the shit out of them. They even have 8 eyes, so there's really no excuse. In this scene, you can also see a 30-year-old woman not giving up her hopes of graduating high school. We also learn that Parker's first name is actually Jesus.
Jesus, Parker, you are a freak.
After breaking his bully's ribs, he starts to understand and experiment with his powers and decides to try them out. While trying to shoot the web, Tobeymaguire says,
Shazam!
Warner Brothers liked this line so much that they actually made it into a movie. He then starts to draw concepts for his suit that he will later use while wrestling for money. As you can see, Peter tears off the same costume concept a total of 4 times, foreshadowing how Sony would later scrap Spider-Man 4 and throw it into the trash along with my hopes and dreams. After figuring out that simping for MJ doesn't do the trick, he decides to get a nice car. Take notes, guys. My girlfriend says the reason I got her was because I pulled up in my Ford Fiesta the very first date. However, Peter doesn't have money for a car, but finds out that wrestling pays good money, so he lies to his grandparents and says that he's going to the library. Uncle Ben then tells Peter that he will drive him to the library. This foreshadows the very next scene, in which Uncle Ben drives Peter to the library. After tricking Ben, he goes to the wrestling match that will net him $3,000 if he can survive 3 minutes in the ring with Bonesaw. The announcer, played by Bruce Campbell, however, changed the human spider's name to Spider-Man. He does this to avoid confusing the viewers, who might think this movie is part of the Human Centipede universe. The cage match begin, and after teasing Bonesaw until he's had enough, we can see him holding a saw that looks a lot like a steel chair, but I could be wrong, and hits Peter to the ground with it. I love that Peter is supposed to be a slim opponent, contrasting with the opposing fighter's physique. But this is seemingly hypocritical, because in this scene, Jesus Parker has a thick dump truck of an ass. I'm gonna have to say though, that the character development is strong in Spider-Man. During the wrestling scenes, he drops homophobic remarks.
That's a cute outfit. Did your husband give it to you?
However, in the third movie, he's seen worrying about his friend's mental health.
Gonna cry?
Even though he beat Bonesaw, he gets ripped off and doesn't get his $3,000. So long story short, Uncle Ben dies by a gunshot, which Peter pays an homage to in the third movie when he does finger gun gestures at passerbys on the street. Peter then upgrades the design of the Spider-Man costume, and as you can see, it's red and blue. This is because Peter Parker has no idea what color spiders are. We then get introduced to J. Jonah Jameson, who is seen editing newspaper. While preparing for the role, J.K. Simmons visited the offices of the New York Post and saw that the editor edited newspapers, so he incorporated it into Jameson's character. Since articles about the spider seems to sell really good, he tells them to put ads for good pictures of Spider-Man, and with good pay. Since Peter is still low on cash after the wrestling ripoff, he decides to sell pictures of himself for money. This is a reference to how he was the first OnlyFans model. Also, he sells photos to the Daily Bugle that obviously only Spider-Man could have taken, which shows that everyone in this movie is an idiot. Back to the Green Goblin, he gets fired from the board of directors, so he decides to take revenge on the festival. Luckily, Spider-Man is there to save Mary Jane. Not the rest of the board members though, he couldn't be bothered. Fun fact, this scene was not CGI. It took 156 takes to get the scene down. This is because Spider-Man kept getting shot with real bullets due to Sam Raimi's dedication to detail. Tobeymaguire was the only actor to survive, nabbing him the role of Spider-Man. He then beats Green Goblin and saves Mary Jane. She then asks,
"Who are you?"
This is because actress Kirsten Dunst wasn't aware that she auditioned for a role in a Spider-Man movie. In order to find out who Spider-Man is, the Green Goblin attacks the Daily Bugle to find out who the photographer is, in which J. Jonah Jameson does not tell who Peter is, even when his life is threatened. This is because JJJ is such a shitty human being that he doesn't even bother to remember Peter's name, despite seeing him on a regular basis. After Spider-Man comes to save the day, and failed, he wakes up on the rooftop where the Green Goblin tries to turn him over to the dark side. And despite being
I'm something of a scientist myself.
Green Goblin never once thought about breaking Spider-Man's wrist while unconscious, which would disable his ability to shoot webs, making battles way easier for him. After more fighting where Peter actually gets injured this time, they're gonna celebrate Thanksgiving. As you can see, Peter wears a green shirt, the color of his alter ego Green Goblin, while Norman Osborn wears a red tie, the color of his alter ego Spider-Man. Green Goblin then decides to attack Aunt May in order to hurt Peter emotionally. However, he did not succeed, and a bedridden Aunt May says to Peter,
"You're not Superman, you know."
Meaning she suffered a terrible concussion, since Superman is in DC Comics and not Marvel. Since villain Defoe didn't succeed with Aunt May, he decides to go after the love interest MJ. As you can see here, Green Goblin easily balanced a cable car with MJ. This means that Mary Jane weighs as much as the cable car, plus the people inside. After Osborn fails, yet again, he decides to take matters into his own hands and kills himself using his own glider. However, moments before Peter says,
I have a father. His name was Ben Parker.
It's a complete coincidence that both Peter's father and uncle are both called Ben. The movie ends with the funeral scene where Harry Osborn mentions that he didn't lose his father, but rather
It was stolen from me.
this is because he considered Norman Osborn as an economic asset rather than his father. That's all for this video, but if you like the content, make sure to leave a like and always make sure to hit that subscribe button. It would help me greatly. Let me know in the comments what movie you would like me to explain terribly next. See you in the next video.